Good evening. Thanks for joining us on India Business Hour. I'm Shireen Bhan. The top stories that we're tracking for you this evening. India and Russia ink 24 inter-government and commercial deals after a bilateral summit between Prime Minister Modi and President Putin in New Delhi. Both nations pledged to achieve $100 billion in bilateral trade by 2030 and agree to begin talks on a free trade deal. India secures supplies of fertilizer. Putin promises uninterrupted fuel supply to India. RBI cuts the repo rate by 25 basis points to its lowest level in 3 years. Governor Malhotra says benign inflation and growth at 8% present a rare Goldilocks period. Hints at room for further rate cuts if inflation continues to remain soft. RBI raises its GDP growth forecast by 50 basis points to 7.3% for this financial year. The central bank will inject 1 lakh crore rupees this month through open market operations. Governor promises to ensure liquidity remains sufficient in the banking system. The government buckles and puts crew rostering norms in abeyance as over thousands of IndiGo's flights are cancelled across India today. Pilots Association protests. IndiGo CEO Peter Elber says cancellations were at its highest levels today as they were rebooting systems and schedules. Expect less than 1,000 flight cancellations tomorrow and return to normalcy by the 15th of December. But remains silent on what caused a disruption of such a massive proportion. Netflix agrees to buy the studio and streaming business of Warner Brothers Discovery for $72 billion. The merger will create a media behemoth that could reshape the entertainment industry and is likely to face regulatory scrutiny. A U.S. delegation is scheduled to visit India next week to hold trade negotiations. Sources say dates are being finalized. Both nations remain hopeful of signing a framework deal this month to address the 50% U.S. tariffs imposed on India. RBI grants in-principle approval to Fino Payments Bank to become a small finance bank. Fino can offer lending services once it gets the license. Fino will be the first payments bank to transition into a small finance bank. An outage at internet infrastructure firm Cloudflare forces dozens of websites to go offline across the world. Online trading platforms like Zerodha, Groww, Upstox and others affected in India. The global CEO of Amazon Web Services plays down fears of an AI bubble even as he expects some froth among startups. Matt Garman is upbeat on India and the company's plans to invest nearly $13 billion by 2030. That's an exclusive. Simone Tata, the mother of Noel Tata and the stepmother of the late Ratan Tata, no more. The woman who built the Lakme and Westside brands passes away at the age of 95. Well, let's start with the RBI monetary policy. The repo rate has been cut by 25 basis points to its lowest level in 3 years. Remember, the state was divided. Governor Malhotra delivering that cut today. Now, this is the 4th rate cut in 2025. Governor Sanjay Malhotra said benign inflation and growth at 8% present a rare Goldilocks period that has allowed the space for a cut. The governor has also hinted at room for more cuts if inflation continues to remain soft. The central bank has also raised its GDP growth forecast by 50 basis points to 7.3%. That is the number for this financial year. It also sees stronger growth of 6.7% in the first 2 quarters of FY27. So that's the GDP forecast there. Now, the inflation forecast for the year has been lowered, but the central bank has warned that inflation could inch higher in the first half of the next financial year. The RBI will also inject 1 lakh crore rupees this month through open market operations. The governor has promised to ensure liquidity remains sufficient in the banking system. Listen in.
Inflation at a benign 2.2% and growth at 8% for the first half of this year presents a rare Goldilocks period. Globally, contrary to earlier expectations, growth has been relatively strong. Evolving geopolitical and trade environments, however, continue to weigh on the outlook.
Going forward, we expect benign inflation, and so if the inflation continues to be the way it is, we expect the rates, the policy rates, to be low and not high. Whether now what rate it will be, that will be, getting into speculation.
Well, that's Governor Sanjay Malhotra. Lata joins us now with more on the monetary policy. Lata, the street was divided going into this policy, the governor delivering another 25 basis point cut. But more importantly, the commentary, what did you make of it?
Well, I think it was a giving policy, a Santa Claus policy, because not only the kind of partially expected rate cut was given, he did not quite shut the door on another cut. But he didn't promise one either, to be fair. What he said was that he's bringing inflation down so much in the first 2 quarters of next year. The original forecast for April, May, June of FY27 was actually 4.9. It was brought down to 4.5 last time and now 3.9. And then for the next quarter, Q2, it's as low as 4%, with the governor repeatedly saying that if you subtract gold from this inflation index, then you get an inflation number which is half a percentage point lower than 4%. So you're talking of 3.5. That kind of repeatedly saying benign inflation can trigger a hope that if the need arises, he is not averse to cutting, though he didn't say. He said it would be speculative to expect a cut. The other positive Santa Claus policy, part of the policy, was the liquidity. Ample liquidity given only for the month of December. He's going to buy bonds, what you call OMO bond purchases, of 1 lakh crore, December 11th and 18th. And on 16th December, they're going to do a 3-year FX buy-sell swap. Basically, that's jargon for putting another $50 billion is what? Half a trillion. So that's 1.5 lakh crore of rupees coming into the system, which also gives the rupee bears a bit of a scare. See, if they've put that much liquidity, they're ready to supply bonds in the market, supply dollars in the market. So in a way, all markets today reacted positively, and that's the positive. If you want to get the key takeaway, all 3 markets, stock markets, bond markets, and rupee, reacted positively to what the governor said. So we should expect, NBFC companies, real estate companies, anybody who benefits from lower interest rates, consumer durables, all of them reacted positively. What may be the downsides? One is that banks are not happy. They are not going to be able to pass on this rate cut because depositors will not deposit if you keep on cutting. The repo can go anywhere, but depositors have their minimum threshold. So they can't cut down their cost of capital, and therefore passing on will be slow and tardy. So not very, very bank positive. The banks are obviously an unhappy lot because of this. The other negative could be you're putting in so much liquidity. As and when inflation picks up, you should be alert to pull back this liquidity. I mean, that's just a warning for the future. Not that inflation is looking like rising, but I'm just saying that just puts the Reserve Bank on notice.
Yes, that caveat is on the table. Lata, many thanks for joining us. Well, the bond market largely steady after the monetary policy. The rupee remains within striking distance of the 90 mark against the dollar. 10-year sovereign bond prices gained in trade and the yield softened marginally to 6.5%. So that was the money market snapshot for you. But from the currency market to the equity market, Dalal Street cheered after the Reserve Bank slashed the repo rate by 25 basis points. All major indices closed higher. However, the market breadth was in favour of the declining stocks. Sensex rose nearly 450 points. The Nifty was higher by about 150 points. The Nifty Bank outperformed nearly 40 Nifty stocks closing in the green today. And the Sensex and the Nifty, of course, closed flat finally. Mid-caps declined over 1%. IT stocks gained the most over the week and posted their biggest weekly gains that we saw in the last 2 months. That's the Nifty IT index up by 3.5%. India and Russia have inked 24 intergovernment and commercial deals, including agreements on migration, healthcare and food safety cooperation. Russian President Putin and Prime Minister Modi have also announced the Economic Cooperation Programme 2030. Speaking at a joint press conference today, Prime Minister Modi said that President Putin's efforts to expand the partnership has taken the relationship to new heights. He added that India and the Russia-led Eurasian Economic Union will work towards a free trade agreement. Meanwhile, President Putin said both nations are aiming to take bilateral trade by $100 billion by 2030, adding that Russia is ready to continue uninterrupted fuel shipments to meet India's energy needs. This comes at a time when President Trump has been claiming that India has significantly reduced its dependence on Russian oil. Earlier today, both leaders held bilateral talks at the Hyderabad House. Prime Minister Modi said India is not neutral when it comes to the war in Ukraine, reiterating that India is on the side of peace. President Putin said that there are more opportunities for cooperation as India and Russia's economies grow.
आज हमने 2030 तक के लिए एक इकोनॉमिक कोऑपरेशन प्रोग्राम पर सहमति बनाई है। इससे हमारा व्यापार और निवेश डाइवर्सिफाइड, बैलेंस और सस्टेनेबल बनेगा और सहयोग के क्षेत्रों में नए आयाम भी जुड़ेंगे। ये मंच हमारे बिजनेस संबंधों को नई ताकत देगा। इससे एक्सपोर्ट, को प्रोडक्शन और को इनोवेशन के नए दरवाजे भी खुलेंगे। दोनों पक्ष यूरेशियन इकोनॉमिक यूनियन के साथ एफटीए के शीघ्र समापन के लिए प्रयास कर रहे हैं। आज हमने 2030 तक के लिए एक इकोनॉमिक कोऑपरेशन प्रोग्राम पर सहमति बनाई है। दोनों पक्ष यूरेशियन इकोनॉमिक यूनियन के साथ एफटीए के शीघ्र समापन के लिए प्रयास कर रहे हैं। क्रिटिकल मिनरल्स में हमारा सहयोग पूरे विश्व में सिक्योर और डाइवर्सिफाइड सप्लाई चेन सुनिश्चित करने के लिए महत्वपूर्ण है।
Last year, our bilateral trade turnover has grown by 12%, setting another record. We are up to the task of getting this number to the level of $100 billion. And to reach this important goal, we have harmonized the program of development of Russian-Indian economic cooperation until 2030. We are ready to continue uninterrupted shipments of fuel for the fast-growing Indian economy.
Well, both leaders there at the Hyderabad House joint press conference. Parikshit Luthra has been tracking all the developments. He joins us now. Parikshit, as President Putin departs from India, what does he take back? And more importantly, what does he leave on the table here?
Well, this was an important visit for President Putin to show the West that his allies are intact and his relationships with countries like India and China are stronger than ever before. Having said that, the Foreign Secretary summed up the visit very well, said that trade and a balanced trading relationship was really the driving impulse of talks during the 23rd Russia-India summit. Now, what happened was this. India urged Russia to open up its markets for Indian pharmaceuticals, automobiles, marine products, agriculture products and textiles. We urged Russia to address the trade deficit. Currently, India imports $64 billion worth of products from Russia and exports just about $4.8 billion. The Prime Minister made it very clear that we need to correct this imbalance and must remove all kinds of impediments to trade and regulatory barriers. In that direction, it is very important to note that both sides will not just accelerate work on a free trade agreement, but they'll also fast-track work on a bilateral investment treaty to promote and protect investments. I would say the migration and mobility agreement is extremely crucial as well. The Foreign Secretary said that Russia right now has a big requirement of skilled workers, and therefore the migration mobility agreement will allow greater movement of Indian construction workers, IT workers, engineers to Russia for employment in the future as well. Defense, always a big area of cooperation. No big ticket deals this time around. But India made one issue very clear, that we've had problems with regard to service and maintenance of aircrafts. And therefore, we need greater Make in India of defense components to support Russian origin weapon platforms in the future. There were discussions on nuclear energy, on continuing the oil trade as well. India will also be granting e-tourism, e-visa facilities to Russian nationals. So those were really big agreements that were signed during the Putin visit. The agreement on fertilizers, very crucial for the Indian economy, and both sides have signed an agreement on long-term supply of fertilizers.
And we saw the fertilizer stocks up and about in trade today. Parikshit, many thanks for comprehensively wrapping up the Putin visit to India. Now, the big story that we've been tracking, 4 days into the crisis at IndiGo Airlines and the government has buckled. The crew rostering norms, which mandated fewer allowable night duties and longer mandatory rest periods, have now been put in abeyance. In a statement, the Civil Aviation Minister said the government has also announced an inquiry into the disruption at IndiGo. IndiGo CEO Peter Elbers said that over 1,000 flights were cancelled today. He added that he expected less than 1,000 flights to be cancelled tomorrow and a return to normalcy by the 15th of December. However, he was silent on what has caused a disruption of such massive proportion. Earlier, the airline had told the government that the new rostering rules had led to a shortage in the availability of pilots. However, pilots' associations have attributed the crisis to IndiGo's arm-twisting tactics. They claim that IndiGo's prolonged, unorthodox, lean manpower strategy, in their words, is the reason behind the current flight disruptions. Several passengers were left stranded at airports across India without access to food or water. Many took to social media to share their ordeal. A newlywed couple on your screens were forced to attend their own reception in Hubli online after their flight from Bhubaneswar to Bengaluru was cancelled. Namita, who was scheduled to travel to Haridwar for the immersion ceremony of her late father, was stranded at the Bengaluru airport. Here's a brief account of what has been a nightmare for passengers across India.
सुबह से खड़े हैं, ये बोल रहे हैं कि 2,500 बैगेज मिसप्लेस।
Trying to contact even the customer care, but no one is lifting the phone.
कस्टमर सर्विस क्या होता है? कस्टमर तो यू आर कस्टमर सर्विस।
हमारे पीछे वाले फ्लाइट चले गए और हम लोग इधर ही है अभी तक।
Call center is not picking up the call. I'm putting my PNR. It's saying non-existent.
What is the half of the flight is not has been reached.
हमको नहीं पता था हमारी फ्लाइट कैंसिल नहीं है, हम अपने घर से आए।
1 बजे डिपार्चर था हमारा, लेकिन वो भी कैंसिल हो गया।
यहाँ पे 3 दिन वेटिंग कर रहे हैं हम।
जैसा यहाँ हमने लैंड किया, उसने बता दिया कि आपका फ्लाइट कैंसिल है।
Immediate concern is to provide all the support to the passengers at the airports, especially, like I've mentioned, the senior citizens and the differently abled. That is the immediate one. But we are observing deeply into this system. We are seeing the scheduling network that is there. We are seeing the FTTL norms that are there. We are going to thoroughly look into it and ensure all the airlines follow the due diligence, because ultimately in aviation, no matter other networks, but aviation, we have to keep safety as a very important factor. We can't compromise on safety. That is the most important thing.
I, on behalf of all of us at IndiGo, would like to extend our sincerest apologies for the major inconvenience this has caused to many of our customers. With these actions, we expect tomorrow to have cancellations below 1,000. The support of DGCA in providing specific FDTL implementation relief is of great help. Still, there's lots of work in progress, but going forward from here, in alignment with the Ministry of Civil Aviation and DGCA, we do expect to further improve every day. Given the size, scale, and complexity of our operation, it will take some time to return to a full normal situation, which we do anticipate between the 10th and the 15th of December.
Well, expect stability to return by the 15th of December. That's Peter Elbers, the CEO of IndiGo, but not commenting on what led to that debacle of epic proportions. Madiha Mujawar joins us now from the Delhi airport. Madiha, what is the situation on the ground? Finally, the government has been forced to put the FDTL norms in abeyance. IndiGo CEO saying that things will return to some degree of normalcy by the 15th of December. Is there any let-up on the ground at this point?
Not really, Shireen. Scenes at the Terminal 1 of the Delhi airport are something that you don't get to see very often. And it also shows that how certain decisions by one airline can disrupt hundreds of lives. And what you see behind me are all affected passengers who came here at the airport for a normal journey and got to know that their flights have been cancelled. They are now sitting helpless, clueless, waiting for answers. They are looking they are asking anyone that they are finding here. They are looking for IndiGo staff, security officials, anybody, to help them understand what's happening with their flights. Several passengers impacted here. Some are elderly, there are babies, there are couples who are waiting, and you can see the queue inside. Everybody is now waiting for answers. What has happened to their flight? When will be their next flight? And there are no answers. There is no certainty. We'll take you to some passengers who are sitting here since morning and have no idea what has happened to their flight. आप कब से वेट कर रहे हैं यहाँ पर?
हम सुबह 11 बजे से कर रहे हैं. 11 बजे इधर आए हैं. हमारा 2 बजे फ्लाइट था, तो वो कैंसिल हुआ है. ये सुबह पर पता चला हमें. सुबह 8 साढ़े 8 बजे पता चला. तो ऐसा कैसे, मतलब 2-3 दिन पहले पता चल जाता तो हम कुछ कर सकते थे. अभी डायरेक्ट पता चला है तो कैसे, क्या करने का. हम इधर क्यू में लग गए रीशेड्यूलिंग और कैंसिलेशन करने के लिए. तो इधर 5-6 घंटे लग गए हमें रीशेड्यूलिंग करने को, ये करने को. गवर्नमेंट का कुछ भी कंट्रोल नहीं है इसके ऊपर.
We'll speak to more passengers here who are all impacted. You can see everyone is sitting here. They are waiting for answers from the IndiGo staff. They don't know when their next flight is. आप कब से वेट कर रहे हैं यहाँ पर?
मैं मैम कल का वेट कर रहा हूँ.
कल से वेट कर रहे हैं. कहाँ जा रहे थे आप?
मुंबई से दिल्ली, दिल्ली से मुंबई, मुंबई से दुबई.
आप कहाँ जा रहे थे और आपकी फ्लाइट कहाँ?
I was traveling from Delhi to Bangalore, and the flight got delayed by 20 hours approximately. And now when we are trying to reschedule the flight, that is on Monday supposedly, that is what they said. There's no confirmation that they will be giving us a confirmation on the tickets or on the flight will. So apparently passengers are waiting since night. I actually came yesterday as well, and the worst part is there was no communication from the airline. That is the worst part. So it was a terrible experience.
So as you can see, there are hundreds of passengers here impacted and waiting for answers. IndiGo, of course, is assuring after the government's decision as well that the operations will come back to normal. But looking at the scale of the impact, it doesn't look like the situation is going to normalize anytime soon. It will take probably some weeks for operations to normalize. Back to you, Shireen.
Many thanks for joining us, Madiha, from the Delhi airport. Shivani joins us now as well. Shivani, what was the DGCA statement which had initially announced a relaxation only for IndiGo, but then a few hours later, the Civil Aviation Minister saying that now the FDTL norms for the entire sector will be held in abeyance?
Well, yes, it's been a dramatic day for Indian aviation. Early this afternoon, the DGCA issued an emergency notification granting IndiGo exclusive relaxations from the key FDTL fatigue management rules. This included easing the night duty definition, allowing more weekly night landings and permitting substitutions against weekly rest, all aimed at helping the airline stabilize its network after days of disruption. But within just 2 to 3 hours, there was a complete turnaround. The Ministry of Civil Aviation stepped in with a fresh order putting all revised FDTL norms in abeyance, not just for IndiGo, but effectively across airlines. The ministry said this pause was essential to ensure passenger convenience and restore normalcy as cancellations surged and congestion worsened at major Indian airports. This rapid shift raises important questions. If the DGCA believed safety-driven FDTL rules could be relaxed only for IndiGo, what changed so quickly that the entire framework was suspended industry-wide? And crucially, what does it mean for pilots' fatigue and safety when rules meant to protect both have been paused on such short notice? What is clear is India's fatigue management rulebook has now been put on hold to tackle an immediate crisis. How long this pause continues and what conditions airlines must meet before the rules return, we'll have to wait and watch for that. Back to you.
Yes, lots of unanswered questions there, Shivani. Many thanks for joining us. Up next on India Business Hour, Netflix agrees to buy the studio and streaming business of Warner Brothers Discovery for $72 billion. That mega deal when we return. Catch all of CNBC TV 18's news and updates on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, X and Geo Hotstar. Subscribe to CNBC TV 18 Access for our exclusive news breaks. Another important story, a team of negotiators from the US are set to visit India next week for a fresh round of trade talks. Sources tell us that dates for negotiations are still being finalized. Abhimanyu is here with the details. Abhimanyu, so possibility of further movement, some sort of a breakthrough, perhaps even as far as that reciprocal framework is concerned?
Government sources have told CNBC TV 18 that a US trade delegation is expected to visit India next week. The dates for the visit are being finalized, even as both the sides remain hopeful of reaching a framework deal by the end of 2025 to address the issue of tariffs. Now, currently, 50% tariffs are imposed by the United States on exports from India, which includes 25% reciprocal tariffs too. So India is looking to address both these aspects before reaching any deal with the United States, including the first tranche of a bilateral trade agreement. Now, this expected visit would come less than a week after the visit of Russian President Vladimir Putin, as well as a Russian trade delegation to New Delhi. Now, India is looking to curb its overall trade deficit with Russia, which is currently around 59 billion US dollars. It intends to export several marine products, agri-products, and consumer goods to Russia. On the other hand, as far as increasing trade with the United States is concerned, both the sides had earlier indicated plans to sign the first tranche of a BTA by the fall of 2025. And both the sides remain hopeful of an equitable deal as early as it is decided. So, of course, all eyes would be on the talks which are taking place virtually, and technical discussions are also continuing on non-tariff barriers between India and the United States, even as both the sides are remaining hopeful of signing a deal to address the issue of tariffs soon.
Well, could we see a breakthrough before Christmas? That's the big story. And the big global corporate story, a media behemoth in the making. Netflix has agreed to buy the studio and streaming business of Warner Brothers Discovery in a $72 billion deal. Rachna joins us now with more on this mega transaction that's currently underway. Rachna.
Netflix has sealed a deal to buy Warner Brothers Discovery, bringing an unexpectedly quick close to a tense bidding race that also drew interest from Paramount, Skydance and Comcast. This agreement mixes cash and stock and values Warner Brothers Discovery at $27.75 per share, taking the total enterprise value to about $82.7 billion. And the equity value of this deal is at $72 billion. The deal gives Netflix control of Warner Brothers' film studio and HBO Max. Warner Brothers Discovery will now move ahead with its plan to spin out Discovery Global, which includes TNT, CNN, and other major broadcast networks. That separation is expected in the third quarter of 2026, after which the acquisition will close. Now, this combination brings one of the largest streaming platforms in the world together with one of Hollywood's most influential studios. The merged library includes The Wizard of Oz, Casablanca, Citizen Kane, Harry Potter, Friends, the DC Universe, and HBO titles like The Sopranos, Game of Thrones, House of Dragon. It gives Netflix expanded creative reach and deeper control of major franchises. Netflix co-CEO Ted Sarandos said the combined catalog will allow the company to give audiences more of what they love. Under the final terms of the deal, Warner Brothers Discovery shareholders will receive $23.25 in cash and $4.5 in Netflix stock for each Warner Brothers Discovery share that would be after closing. Now, before the deal was announced, there was heavy maneuvering around the sale right until the finish. David Ellison's Paramount sent a letter to Warner Brothers Discovery board questioning whether the bidding process was tilted. Now, WBD lawyers replied that the board had fully met its fiduciary duties, but Ellison also met President Donald Trump's officials and lawmakers in Washington, D.C. yesterday to argue against WBD choosing Netflix, even as Paramount reportedly submitted a higher bid of about $30 per share. However, the offer by Netflix involved 85% cash component, which is the reason why this deal swung in its favor. Now, a key point to note here is that Netflix and HBO are two of the top global streaming services. One absorbing the other is expected to attract strong competition scrutiny because of the scale of the content consolidation it would go through and the potential impact on consumers. If and when regulators clear it, this could become one of the most defining media deals of the decade and reshape the balance of power in global entertainment. Back to you.
Not just the decade, this will be one of the mega deals of all times in the media and entertainment space, Rachna. Many thanks for joining us. That is the big global story. And that brings us to a wrap on this edition of India Business Hour. Remember, do continue to watch CNBC TV 18. We've got plenty lined up for you. We've got some very interesting weekend programming as well, so do tune in for that. But for now, from all of us here, goodbye. Thanks very much for watching.